I've come to the Translational Research Institute here in Brisbane to meet with Professor Ian Frazer. He is the co-inventor of the human papillomavirus HPV vaccine, which prevents cervical cancer in women and many other cancers in males of the throat and of the genitals. It's very exciting to meet with Professor Frazer. I first sent him samples in the 1980s, and his lab was able to determine what kind of warts were causing disease in children. And now we're on the threshold of eradicating cervical cancer in women. It's really exciting. Professor Frazer, it's a privilege to have you here today, and I wanted to ask you some really special questions. One is, just tell us how you discovered and developed a vaccine.
Look, I was interested in a particular virus which a German professor had shown was responsible for a cancer. The virus was called papillomavirus. And as an immunologist, as somebody interested in how the body defends itself against infection, I wanted to understand more about how the body got rid of this virus or failed to. And to do that, we actually had to build the virus in the laboratory, because this was a virus that nobody had been able to grow anywhere. So we actually set out to build the virus using genetic engineering techniques, which in those days were pretty new. And my colleague Jan Zhu and I engineered to build the shell of the virus. We didn't actually set out to make a vaccine. We set out to understand more about the virus. But when we saw that we could build the shell of the virus in the lab, and relatively easily, we realized that that could be the basis of a vaccine, and then went on to pursue the idea of turning what we'd discovered into an actual vaccine, which we did first of all in our own laboratory and then passed on to the commercial companies that develop vaccines.
It's a fantastic story, and one of the things I really love about your story is the partnership that you had with your team, and that you always give credit to the team. And we all know Ian Frazer, but we also know because of you that you have a team who developed the vaccine.
Yes, look, you can't do science on your own. The two key players were myself and my colleague Jan Zhu. Jan brought in a lot of experience in molecular virology, and I brought in the immunology side of things. And so the two of us worked together as a partnership very well, first of all in Cambridge, and then when we came back to it, I lured him back to Australia, and he came and worked with me in my laboratory. He, in turn, had a great helper in the form of his wife, Xiaoyi Sun. Xiaoyi was the technician behind the throne, if you know what I mean. She did all of the basic science at the bench. Jan had the ideas, I had ideas, we got them together, and then Xiaoyi did the work.
I heard in the media just a few days ago that cervical cancer could be eradicated, just wiped out. Tell us about that.
We have a vaccine now to help prevent cervical cancer. We've been using it in Australia for over 10 years. And what's happened over that 10 years is about a 90% reduction in the rate of new infections with this virus, just through vaccinating approximately 30% of the population. About 70% of women aged between 12 and 25 were vaccinated at the beginning, and more recently all young boys and girls are vaccinated at the age of 12. This virus, you can predict by mathematical modelling, will disappear from the vaccinated community very quickly, and will disappear from the rest of the community through herd immunity over the course of they estimate now 5 to 7 years, and it'll be gone, which I think is pretty impressive. I didn't think it would be that good, but the modelling that's been done most recently suggests that's what will happen. The only people who will still be at risk in this country will be people who've come in from outside of the country unvaccinated and bringing the virus with them.
What's the benefit for boys?
Well, there are three benefits for boys, or at least there are three reasons for immunising boys. The first one is obviously that boys get cancers caused by these viruses as well, cancers in the mouth and throat and some other cancers, so they're protecting themselves. Secondly, by being vaccinated, they protect their female partners, because if they've been vaccinated, they can't pass the virus on. And then the third reason that we reckon that it's important to immunise boys is because if you're looking on a global scale, if you immunise only a part of the population, and particularly one sex of the population, then people start wondering why that might be and conjuring up strange ideas about maybe it's to induce sterility in women, or there's some particular reason why the vaccine might be harmful, but it's okay to give it to women but not to boys. So it's really quite important to show that this is a universal program. And also it will eradicate the virus spread quicker. So that if you could immunise just the girls, it will take about twice as long to get rid of the virus from the whole community.
There's a lot of vaccines we give to teenagers who are in high school. Would you like to reflect on the various benefits that teenagers can have from being vaccinated, including the prevention of human papillomavirus?
Well, obviously, the vaccine that I think is most important to give to teenagers is the papillomavirus vaccine, because you can get the vaccine in just before you'd be likely to be at risk of catching the infection. And of course, that's when you'll have the best immunity and therefore the best chance that the vaccine will work. But we also give booster vaccines to children who have reached their teenage years. We want to make sure they're fully protected as adults. And indeed, this whole business of more vaccinations as you grow older. I've just had the vaccine that I had as a child repeated because I'm about to become a grandfather. And therefore I want to make sure that I'm not going to pass on whooping cough pertussis to my newly born grandchildren, who of course, having not yet been fully vaccinated, would be at risk. So the idea of putting vaccines into the system as you grow older is going to be important, just to make sure we maintain this business of herd immunity.
How do you yourself and how do you observe other people fostering and helping the careers of young scientists?
I think that's one of the pleasures of being a scientist, is working with other scientists, and particularly with the next generation. You want to inspire them, so you give them examples of success. You want to also mentor them so they see how to get there. And in doing so, they learn and you learn too, because my more junior scientists teach me about the things I don't know about yet. And they always like to score a few points off me by showing they know more than I do.
Do you find in the course of your scientific endeavour that you get any important ethical dilemmas that you have to deal with, or are there things that you could sort of describe that would teach a young scientist about dealing with the ethics of what we do?
Well, look, ethics is an integral part of scientific research. Scientific research is one of these areas where everybody depends on everybody else doing it right. And I think one of the biggest challenges for a young scientist is to understand the really critical importance of getting it right. And that doesn't mean doing an experiment once and saying, I like that answer, I'll use it. It means going on to show rigorously that in fact you can get that answer all the time, and therefore your conclusions are probably valid. It also is important to the ethics of science also include the ethics of collaboration. If you're collaborating with someone, you've got to duly acknowledge that that is a collaboration and make sure that they get as much credit as you do for the work that's done. But the whole of science depends on good collaborations, and good collaborations can only work where people trust each other to be appropriately acknowledged.
I love immunology because there are so many interesting things to discover and rediscover and new things to learn. And one of the exciting things about the vaccines you developed is that they go on protecting for so long. They seem to provide long-term protection. Is there some clever immunology around the vaccine that makes them so long-lived in their protection?
I don't think so. I think it's more just a case that our immune system lasts for a long time, just as well too. I mean, when we get an infection in childhood, we are by and large protected for life. Measles at the age of 5, nobody should get measles now because we have a vaccine, but the evidence from studies done in remote islands off the coast of Scotland was that if measles went through the community and then measles didn't come in for another 50 years, all the people over 50 years old were still protected against the measles and all the younger people were not. So it's clear that the immune system's got a lot of memory built into it. It's not a perfect memory, which is why we sometimes have to go back with repeat vaccinations, but it is an integral part of the system.
And is there anything else that you feel that a 14-year-old at high school who wants to be a scientist, what would you like to say to her or to him?
Look, the nice thing about being a scientist is you determine what work you do yourself. You're driven by your own curiosity into whatever area you want to go in. There are not many jobs where you get that choice. No. And I think that it's it's fun. You discover new things and you can go and tell people about them. And sometimes they make a difference in the way that we do things. but always you'll be putting a piece of the jigsaw puzzle into a bigger jigsaw puzzle which will actually answer problems for people generally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.